What happens to us after we die? Do we cease to exist, or do we live on? This may be the biggest question that mankind has ever asked, as well as what this podcast is about. In this show, we will examine past life memories, speak with professional hypnotherapists, astral projection practitioners, psychics, and much more, all in an attempt to decipher this riddle. So welcome to the puzzle. Welcome to the regression session. Welcome back to the regression session. My name is Ian, and this week we're going to be hearing from Shimi. Shimi lives in Israel, and he has some crazy stories. He has some past life memories. He has astral projection experiences. He has experiences with demons. He has experiences with alien astral abduction and physical abduction. So there's just all kinds of stories. This is a very content-packed episode. So stay tuned to the end and listen to all of it because his stories are out of this world. Shimi has also sent me some of his drawings where he depicts some of the scenes that he has seen in his experiences. So if you want to check those out, head over to my Facebook page. There's a link in the description, but it's just the regression session, the regression session podcast on Facebook. So head over there, check out those drawings. If you want to come onto the podcast to share your experiences or your knowledge on any metaphysical topic, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com. And now let's finally get into today's episode. Hey Shimi, thanks for coming on to the show.
Hey Ian, glad to be here.
Yeah, and like I said, I really appreciate you coming on. And just before we get into it, like I said, I'm really excited to talk to you about all this stuff. But if you could tell my audience just a little bit about your background for context and kind of maybe how you were raised or whatever you want to tell us for context.
Sure. We are Russian immigrants. We came from Moscow to Israel in 1991 when I was 4 years old. I'll tell you what, like my life here, there's immigrants, a bit of racism in the mix. It was an interesting time having no money. But all the boring stuff aside, ever since I was little, I remember between the ages of 1 and 4, I would have these vivid dreams about how I was born. For instance, I saw in the delivery room, I saw my mom giving birth to me back in Soviet Russia in 87. And I remember constantly bugging my mom and describing all of these things to her. Like I would remember how they would leave me and my brother when I was like 2 years old with my grandma over there in Moscow, like when it was snowing, and I remember what we did in the backyard and how everything looked like and all of those things. And I just kept bugging them with all of this stuff, right? And they'd be like, oh, he's just dreaming. But at the same time, they'd be really worried because it was true. Because you have this misconception, right, that kids are not supposed to remember these things, right? You're supposed to basically start your life off at around the age of 8 or 10 when it comes to these kinds of life memories. But yeah, that was my life. I was the weird kid that would always talk to himself, but I wasn't really talking to myself because to me there were these things that were talking that it's not that I'm the only one who could hear them. I imagined that everyone was having the same experience. That's the funny part. But the more I grew up, the more I talked to other people, I just became crazy Shimi because it was not everybody else's experience. And it started off like really nice and really fun. But then when I grew up, teenager, like I was having a lot of depression and stuff, a bit of alcoholism. All of these experiences started turning a bit negative. And Yeah, slowly but surely, I was just trying to ignore that stuff and just live my life, you know? And I just started getting like these weird illnesses. It started off with a skin condition I had all my life, then it turned into complicated migraines, then it turned into IBS, and they did a surgery and took out my gallbladder as well because they just couldn't find what the problem is. And just gradually, like chest pains, muscle pains, it just escalated, asthma. Like, anyway, long story short, I was having these odd experiences all my life, including random out of body experiences. I would lucid dream almost every single night since I was a little boy. And yeah, I just tried to find myself. Like, religion never felt right. It's because I already knew about these spirits. And to me, it felt like all these people going to these churches, not only were they misled by these people, right? Pretending that they're the only ones who can, you know, speak to God. And why are they the only ones who can do that, right? When in reality, they would go to these places and there would be a bunch of spirits there that would leech on all of their energy, on all of their worries, and all of their fears that they were supposedly praying to God about, right? And later I found out that it's not because of what they were doing or where they were doing it, it's because of how they were doing it. Like, they, instead of praying inside of themselves to that, you know, love connection that we have with the creator that we are a part of, they have this idea that it's something outside of themselves that they have to find somehow, right? By randomly just sending everything they have to this whatever, wherever it is.
Okay,
And
so sorry to interrupt you, but
no worries.
so you said something that's really interesting to me, and I I have somewhere that I'm going to go with this. You said that there were spirits leeching on the energy that they were basically throwing out there. So, for context, for anybody listening to this, I am of the belief that if you give energy to something, it's going to receive that energy. So, for example, um, I'll just use Donald Trump, regardless of
Mm-hmm.
anybody who likes or hates Donald Trump, it doesn't matter. Regardless of that, everybody who hated him and everybody who loved him, they were all like putting all of their energy into Donald Trump, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that made him like really famous. And it put him in a position where he had a lot of power over a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they were still pouring all their energy into it. Everybody who hated him, especially, but it just gave him more power. So
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying about these spirits like leeching on the energy, that makes a lot of sense to me, because if you're just throwing your energy out and it's just there, maybe something could leech on it. So could you describe, like, could you see this happening or could you sense this happening?
Yes.
What?
I had all of the feelings and all of the senses. Thing is, it just wasn't very consistent. Sometimes I'd be able like to see them physically, and sometimes I'd not. I'd just see some kind of weird like shape in the air, you know, like this translucent indentation in the shape of something. And it would be either over a person or next to them or usually behind them. And I could feel a presence. I sometimes I could hear something in my head. Like, it wasn't always like the sound of words. It was as if there's a conversation going on and I'm just aware of it. I don't know how to explain it, but I wasn't hearing it with my ears, obviously. But you just know. And there's just so much going on. Like, I'd be able to see these colors moving in the air. I remember I once asked my friend in eighth grade, we were just walking together, and I was like, "Hey, man, you know, I have this weird experience, and I don't want you to tell anyone." Because, yeah, I was young. I was like really nervous about this. Everybody already thought I was crazy. I was just trying to downplay it all and to be normal. I was like, "Do you see this like colors and like these moving lights in the air everywhere, around everything, and in everything, and you know?" And he just, maybe I didn't explain it right, but he just looked at me. He thought about it. He said, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Oh, never mind. It's cool." It's funny that I stopped talking to that guy, right? But the year after that, I found a cute little book about auras. I think in Stimatsky. It's one of our bookstores here in Israel. And dude, I wish I could have talked to that kid because that book was amazing.
And that's so interesting to me. And here's why it's so interesting, just so that you can know why I find it so fascinating. There's this I don't remember the culture. I'm gonna have to do some research and try to link it in the description of this episode, but there's this culture that I've heard of um that basically, let me rewind. So in a lot of the religions of the world in the world right now, a lot of them like Christianity,
Hmm.
I think Judaism possibly, and in Islam, the God that they worship, it's like if you strip everything away, it's basically the same God, just seen in a different way,
Hmm.
right? But like I think the name that for the God is Yahweh.
Yeah, Yehovah in
Yeah.
the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah, there's different. He goes by different names, but we'll call him, just for simplicity, we'll call him Yahweh because that's just what
Hmm.
I'm used to calling it. There's a culture out there, or there was, that believed that this entity is not a god, but an entity like a spirit. And
Hmm.
what it did is it influenced people to create all of these religions around it, so that it
Hmm.
could feed off of all the negativity and the suffering and the second guessing and the depression that comes with it. And if you think about all of the religions that are worshiping this entity or this god, it kind of makes a lot of sense. If you think about, like, the Crusades, and then there's basically three factions. There's Islam, and then there's Christianity, and then Judaism. They all pretty much have clashed all throughout history, and there's been a lot of suffering that's come with that. And if you think about it, it kind of makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm not saying that that's gospel truth, but it makes a lot of sense, and especially with you seeing these spirits leeching off of energy, that's just the first thing I thought of was like, what if, you know?
Dude, don't get me started on everything beyond the body. Like, I can fast forward to basically when I started doing this intentionally. And I can tell you, I've seen so many things. I used to think that people who believe in demons are crazy and that there are no demons, just negative spirits or beings who have a negative state of, emotion, who do obviously not so nice things because of that. But apparently demons are real. And Donald Trump and all of that aside, I one time had an experience of sharing temporarily the body experience. You can do that out of body. You can share the experience of other animals and beings and things. And for whatever reason, I was sharing the body experience of Nancy Pelosi, and I didn't even know who that was at the time. And she wasn't a human soul. She was a demon soul inside of a human sleeve. And she was on a private jet. I was with her throughout the flight. And then she got to some kind of office somewhere, some kind of building. And all of the people inside were just like her. They were all demons inside of people bodies, pretending to be people, but they're not people. Which reminds me of Zuckerberg and how he talks about himself in the third person and how he's not a human, but he does things that humans like to do.
That's
But it's
so
like,
weird.
you make fun of that, but then you find out that, oh my gosh, like reality is way more weird even than what, let's call them, conspiracy theorists would say. And I never
Oh,
considered myself that. I just thought that I was a spiritual person. I didn't even look for this stuff. I just wanted to know what's really going on with me and with this planet. And the things I was shown, just because of that intention, just blew my mind. Because how do you imagine that, right? Like, why would you imagine that? And it's not just demons inside of bodies, there were also demons in spirit form there to advise them.
that's so interesting. And so you've lived in Israel basically your entire life, for the most part, right?
Since I was 4 years old.
Yeah, so all your entire life that you could really even do anything, you've lived in Israel. So Nancy Pelosi basically means nothing to you, right?
She
Because
wasn't even on my radar. I had to look her up on Google after that.
you were told about Nancy Pelosi at like in your teenage years or in your like your 20s?
No, I didn't even know who the Prime Minister of Israel was until the whole vaccination thing started.
Wow. And
I
then
just
but you
did not
knew.
follow politics. I knew about Donald Trump, or before I knew about Pelosi. I'll tell you why. That was because, again, I wanted to know the truth. So, like, sometimes I'd be shown my past lives and, meet my family or ET family from before this life. And sometimes I'd have these bizarre experiences about what's happening in the world. And I had a lot of really positive things come through about Donald Trump. I don't care what anyone tells me. This is not about politics. This is just what I experienced and what these aliens, right, that are supposedly my family. And I'm saying supposedly because obviously I have no proof of this or even that they exist, right, physically. But this is what they showed me and what they told me. And I just wanted to know because there was a lot going on in the world and it's just really confusing. I'm sure you can understand that a lot of people feel this way right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel that way too sometimes. But that's so interesting that that happened. I had another guy on my show recently that said that he thinks that a politician here was killed by somebody in the astral plane for political reasons because a
It's
guy came to him.
possible.
Yeah, a guy
Hmm.
came to him when he was meditating in an astral projection forum and was
Hmm.
like, would anybody care basically if I killed this guy off? And he was like, I don't care, do what you want. 'Cause he didn't really necessarily, I think, believe that he could. But then, like, the guy died within like a week or two of that experience.
I had one of my body experiences. It was the one I told you before we started the recording with what's her name, Dolores Cannon. In that same experience, I accidentally almost killed someone by pushing them really hard out of their body. And he
Huh.
got back to his body, but I had the feeling that he's now basically the same as a person with like severe Down syndrome. And I don't know why. I don't know what I did to them. And I remember feeling so, I didn't try to hurt this person. It's like if you want to hear the experience from A to Z, like you'll understand the context.
Yeah, just if you don't mind, just start from like before when you met Dolores Cannon because that's interesting because Dolores Cannon is huge in this kind of puzzle. She's a
Hmm.
huge pioneer. So if you don't mind just talking about that and then we'll move in and then just kind of move along the experience because that's really fascinating.
Oh, no problem. But she's just part of the experience. So do you want me to start like with the part with Dolores and then pedal
Yeah.
back or
Yeah, just
okay.
start with the part of with Dolores and then just move
Hmm.
back cuz before I forget about it cuz that's really interesting. I did want you to talk about that.
Oh, no problem. Basically what happened was this. I wanted it's a bit crazy, but I've been meeting with the aliens and everything, and I was like, hey, why am I waiting for somebody else to make some kind of discoveries, about like free energy devices? Why don't I research that? Like I can go out of my body and I can find that out myself, right? And yeah, we all have these hopes with this out of body thing, but just because you can do it doesn't mean you can find out everything you want. Like, how can I say this? Like, I'm not an engineer, right? Even if I saw this stuff, like I wouldn't be able to recreate. But at the time, the naive me wanted to try. So I didn't really know what I was looking for or where I'm supposed to go. So I just went inside myself and I asked to just whatever for my higher self, whatever. That's how I usually do it. I just focus on myself and I just have the intention of whatever I'm looking for, right? Even if I don't have a specific destination. And then space started warping around me and I find myself in 1950s inside of some kind of base in America. America happens a lot in my past lives and out of body experiences. That's probably why my English is so good. But anyway, so yeah, I just find myself in some kind of military base in the 50s. I don't even know what base that was. And there was this scientist guy, and he came out of this building, this research facility, and he went. There was this like curfew or something. Like that they were not supposed to leave after a certain time for security reasons, but he snuck out because he wanted to do something with the generator. I guess he didn't have enough power or whatever for his experiment. And I had this feeling, I could read his mind. I had this feeling that he was working on an energy device for the government. And I was like, oh, wonderful. Like, this is what I was looking for, right? So I followed this guy, and that's where it comes to the guy that I accidentally injured. I can see that in a moment, this security guard is going to come over around the corner and going to see him. And I'm not going to be able to find out anything from this guy after that because he's going to be taken away to prison or something, right? So I just go over there and I just have this instinct to push him out of his body. But I guess I did that way too hard because his physical body fell over and I could see his spirit floating right next to his body and he was very confused. And then after a few seconds, he kind of went back in. But I don't know, maybe because he was awake in the body or something. When he came back, he wasn't moving. He was just drooling and he was just staring. He wasn't even blinking. I knew he was alive, but something there was not right. And the scientist guy, I don't know why he didn't even, like, he thought it was really odd, but he just thought this guy just sat down, I don't know, to take a break or something. He was just not paying attention to him. So he did what he needed to do. And I just panicked. I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? Like, it's not about karma or anything, but I just think it's just obviously that I just don't go around just injuring people for no reason. You know what I mean? And I like it out of body. I like how every time you have a problem, you have this intention and you wish someone would come and assist you. Somebody comes and somebody showed up to my right. And it was just a regular white looking dude. I don't know where he came from. He just reassured me that everything was okay. And I moved on with my life. You know, this stuff happens out of body. I don't question it. I just go with it. And I keep following this guy into that research facility. And then I look to my right. And he goes up the stairs to his lab on the second floor, and I see the spirit of Dolores Cannon. And she's just hovering there in the lobby of this building. And she's talking to a bunch of her fans who are also deceased. And I kind of queue up, just like on Earth, on one of her talks, you know, there's so many people waiting to talk to her. And I just kind of wait and I look at her. And I'm like, I'm just gonna let them talk, and after they're done, I'll come over to her as well. And she just sees me at some point, and she asks everyone to leave, and then she motions me to come over to her with her hand. And I float over to her, and I look at her, and I become so sad because I remember all of the videos of her I've seen about past life regressions and whatnot, and how she talks about 5D Earth. And I guess, like you said, I must have missed the part where she said she's not going to be part of that or not going to be able to see that because I thought that she was so cheated out of the experience, right, by dying early. And I was just really upset about it. And she saw that and she gave me a hug and then she started laughing. And then she said something along the lines of, what was it? Something like, young people, they have no patience or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds like
and
her.
then I remembered that was it. That was the part with Dolores. It was super short. I just felt like I knew her or something, but I just remembered instantly after that thing she said. I was like, oh right, I have another objective to do here, right? This is not why I came here. And I followed that guy again. He started talking to his female friend or something, and I was trying to like telepathically tell him, just go up the stairs already and show me your device. And as he was going up the stairs, that's when the experience ended. I was just pulled back to my body. I think with the Dolores Cannon thing, I think I got too emotionally overwhelmed. And when you do that, that's not a good idea. Like when you start rushing things and you start getting flustered, you'll just end up back in your body.
So you didn't get to see what he was creating?
Nope. I got blue balls, pretty much. I kind of gave up on that because I just realized very quickly that it's not about what I wanted. Like there is supervision, right? I'm not just a kid playing around doing whatever I want. There is supervision. Some of my experiences were very constructed by something else. Like sometimes it'd be these ET relatives, sometimes it'd be these deceased friends of mine from other lifetimes or something. Like, but a lot of them, like 80% of them, I wasn't just doing whatever I wanted. I was kind of guided. into different directions and things that I guess I needed to know. Like I thought I was going to find out this device, right? How to build this free energy device. But in reality, I was guided to Dolores Cannon for whatever reason, probably to resolve these feelings I had, because I was still trying to understand the purpose of everything and why everything turns out the way it does, you know?
Yeah, and that's just it's just really weird, like that whole thing, and that's with astral projection. It's always all these experiences I've heard. They're just like really weird. It's just like so bizarre. All these just
Hmm.
random things that happen. But when people describe it, they don't describe it the same way they describe a dream. They're like, no, I was there, and I was really there. It wasn't a dream.
It just feels very different from a dream experience. Like I can give you a very long list of my subjective ideas of these differences, but you just really have to have the experience to know for yourself. Because it's like, how do you explain these subjective spiritual experiences? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, how can
I
I,
do.
like, I can give you what I think the differences are or how it feels to me, but like, there are people who go out of body and hear everything. I keep forgetting that listening is even an option. You can have all your senses out of body, just so you know. You just can't feel pain. Pain and suffering is something we can only feel in the bodies. Out of body, you feel light, you feel wonderful. You're like the wind. You can pass through anything. And everything just feels like a weird kind of electricity. Everything feels like it has a weird field, like magnetism and like electricity are very common sensations. Everything just feels like a hologram, and you're like I don't know, like light passing through it. And you can still hear, feel like anything you want, touch. I even ate one time out of body. And because I heard rumors that it was possible, I wanted to try. But the point is, you can still do all of these things, and it's very different. There is no physical body. There is no, like, you don't feel like, even when I ate, it was just the idea, and that took the holographic form of a food item, and I took a bite, and I got the memories of whoever created this, of how they felt when they were alive and they ate it for like a few seconds, until it felt like it's dissolving, like it's water dissolving in a bigger pool of water, like a tiny drop that I took in that dissolved into me somehow, like, because I don't have a mouth. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I'm sure that it's hard to explain versus to experience.
But the point is that some people choose to hear, for instance, that was my example, and I keep forgetting that's even possible. I don't know why. I don't even think about it because I hear all the telepathic, stuff in the air, like all of the voices inside of people's heads, and I can feel their feelings. It's just not necessary to me to have, the physical hearing experience that we have here. It just feels like, why do I need that? Like I can hear the true intentions of people's and feel them in their hearts. I don't need to hear what the blah blah they're talking about, especially if they're in the body and they can't even see me most of the time.
Yeah, I don't even know how to respond to that because I just don't even I can't even begin to understand how that you know what I mean? It's just weird. Like I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, that whole concept. To move on, you keep on mentioning your alien family. Are you willing to talk about that a little
Hmm.
bit?
Of course. Basically, what happened is, before the age of 26, before I started astral projecting, I just had these weird spiritual experiences physically in my dreams, whatever. Sometimes I'd pop out of body, but it would just be so brief, so short for a few moments. I didn't even like I'd barely realize what was happening. I'd get excited about it and it was over, right? And that would happen like once every year or two. But like, and usually when I would just take a nap, I wasn't even expecting it, right? I was just feeling a bit drowsy throughout the day, and I just, I'll just lie down on the couch for a few minutes. But then when I got to the age of 26 and I got really sick, like I said, I started exploring, like I wanted to know my past lives, blah, blah, blah. I thought dreams were garbage. I didn't even understand the meaning of dreams or their importance. So I was like, I'm gonna skip that shit. Like, oh, yeah, I have a lot of fun in like my lucid dreams. I don't know what that means. I'll just go out of body. Then I started practicing going out of body, and it got really intense. Like I got that's I didn't even think aliens were part of the picture. I didn't even like. It's not that I didn't know that there was life outside this planet. Like everybody, I saw television, right? I saw movies, and I was like, oh right, sure, aliens somewhere on some planet, right? They tell us everything's dead out there, but I'm sure somewhere there's one of them. You know what I mean? Like one civilization somewhere in a billion stars like us. And what I found out was the complete opposite. Like I just wanted, it just started out with, oh, I want some people who used to know and love me to come. That's what I would say in my meditations before I would project. I just want someone who knew and loved me to come and, explain some things to me and show me the truth of myself and everything. That was my mantra for a couple of weeks. And then lo and behold, because I still didn't know very well how to project myself, I needed guidance. And who came up? These tall blonde people that were not from Earth, and I could tell they were not from Earth. And they acted like guides for me for the first 2 years of this experience. And they would take me, like, on the first experience that they took me out of body, they were like, what do you want to see, Shimi? I was like, I want to see the Earth from space. So they took me to space to see the Earth. And of course, I still had a lot of fears I was working on, such as my fear of height and of the ocean. And guess what they showed me from out of space? Apparently, the Earth, who knew, is mostly water. So I had a short experience of doing that and being extremely afraid. I'm so happy I had these beings with me to supervise because they took me out because I was just paralyzed for 20 minutes at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, just hallucinating sharks. And I knew logically they could not hurt me. I'm out of body. I don't have a physical body. I don't even need to breathe, right? But we still have these illogical fears we carry with us, and it takes some getting used to. So basically, they showed me that. Then they showed me, they were like, okay, let's turn you around away from the Earth now. What else would you like to see? I was like, show me Jupiter. I always saw these pictures, of that NASA took of all of the planets in our solar system, and I was like, I want to see if it looks the same way. Obviously, the Earth didn't, by the way. It was still round, but how do I even explain this? It looked, it didn't look like a complete circle. It looked more of like a misshapen potato. And I don't know, things just didn't look exactly like it didn't look exactly the same. I don't know how to explain it. Just looked a little bit different. It was still pretty spot on, but yeah. Anyway, they turned me around. Jupiter, here we go. We come to Jupiter. You know how they highlight in Photoshop all the colors on all of the planets they take pictures of? Well, where's the beautiful red eye? Where are all of the beautiful colors? Nothing. It's just a gray blob of smoke. I was like, really? This is what? Like, I did all of this to go out of body just for this? I was like, well, what is this crap? And the second I thought how disappointing this was, everything changed. They took me to this higher frequency, like a higher level of the same reality, right? Let's take it one step up. And as soon as we did that, and I don't know if it was 5D or like just a higher 4D reality or something, like nobody explained the details to me, but suddenly everything changed. Also, a bunch of gas giants appeared around Jupiter being in the center, and they were in the shape of a cross, like the Christian cross. You had like three of them on every side, three of them at the top, and like five going towards me. And I just remember they asked me which one of these I would like to go and explore. And I was terrified of gas giants because I didn't even know what was inside of them, if you know what I mean. It's like the terrifying part is always when you don't know, right? But yeah, I just picked one. We started zooming in. There was so many clouds that I had to go through. And the interesting part is it already started out with these aliens who I didn't know at the time were aliens, right? Unofficially. But I knew they were not from Earth. I just thought, wow, maybe they're my deceased relatives from. I had some concepts that we may have come from other planets before we came to Earth. I just didn't know how long I was here at the time. So anyway, we go down to this gas giant that doesn't even exist in our visible spectrum of reality, right? In some higher version of whatever our solar system. And the first thing that greets me, suddenly I'm like, I know that those three that take care of me are still there, but they're invisible to me because they are the ones who take me everywhere. But I feel this massive presence floating behind me in the clouds. And I'm not aware of a shape. It just merges with the clouds somehow. And it greets me. It tells me, welcome to blah, blah. I don't remember the name of I never remember the names of the planet, but some kind of name of this planet, welcome. And and they asked me like, why did you come here? What are you, like, why are you here? Why are you visiting our planet? And at first I didn't understand because it was just one guy, right? But he felt to me like some kind of male presence speaking in my head. And I was like, hey, look, I was meditating. I asked my higher self to, I don't know, take me to another planet because I wanted to see something cool. And here I am. And then I had this habit at the time. I wanted to thank my higher self because I wasn't really sure what was happening, what was causing these experiences, right? When I was meditating, I wasn't always referring to these other beings because I just started this relationship with them. I was just thinking that, oh, okay, my higher self is coordinating all of these things. So I was like, thank you, my higher self, for bringing me to this bizarre and different planet. And he heard that and he was like, oh, right. And he wanted to like make me feel welcome. He was like, yeah, I feel you. He was kind of without words telling me that they also have like some kind of similar concept. And he was like, thank you. He was repeating what I was saying. And he wanted to make me feel that I wasn't like crazy for saying that. And suddenly I felt like thousands of beings in those clouds. And you know what's interesting? They tell us that there's no life on gas giants, but there are gaseous beings that have humanoid shape to them of different like hues and colors of pinks and purples, at least there, what I saw in oranges, and they live in the clouds. They even shape the clouds into structures. There was like a big, like a castle looking thing, and you had these little families, these bigger gas giant, like whatever people, and they had sometimes smaller ones that felt like children. I don't know, it was just weird. And that was their physical experience. And they would get something from the atmosphere. They would like absorb something into themselves to maintain their physical form. But it wasn't the end because we were going down and at some point the clouds ended and there was an ocean and there was rain and there was nothing else. There was no land, nothing. And I could see some lights in the distance. And there was almost like a artificial structure. At the time, I didn't see any spaceships yet or anything like that. That was just the start. But there was this like, I don't know. It reminded me of like an aircraft carrier, you know, for the military.
Yeah.
It was just this really flat thing in the shape, like a triangular shape that was just kind of like a hovering base. And it had these floating lights in the ocean around it. And it also had an entrance inside. And I thought I was going to go in there, right? That seemed like the most interesting thing. But no, I see, of course, I'm Shimi. I'm amazing this way. I'm great at distracting myself. I see this floating thing in the water. It looked almost like an alien gray, but if you can imagine, like the Michelin Man, I think it's called, maybe the one with the from the Ghostbusters movies. You know what I mean? Like this ghost-looking thing that looks like his body is made up of white tires, one stacked up on top of one another. This thing had the head of a gray with these giant eyes, and it was grayish in color and shiny because it was floating on top of the water next to that platform. And it felt like a person, and he had, instead of a body, he was almost like a balloon. He had these like tire-looking things that his body was made of, and he didn't have any arms or anything. He was just floating on top of the water. And instead of going inside of this interesting structure, right, inside of some weird gas giant planet, I go, wow, look at this cool thing. I'm gonna go say hello. And I just float right up to him and I want to shake his hand, but he doesn't have any hands. And then in his mind, he can feel me that I'm looking for something to shake. He like makes me feel that I should look down. And I look down under the water, and he has four arms down there. And I just randomly shake one of them. And the interesting part, every time I touch something or someone, and I have the intention to feel it, I feel it. And he felt like he was made of rubber. He felt like he was, I don't know, filled with some kind of liquid, like he didn't have any bones at all, like he was an inflatable balloon almost. It was just the most bizarre thing. He didn't communicate in words or anything. And after that, I felt like, I don't know, I start getting my fear of the ocean again. And I just got yanked out of there and right back in my body. And that was basically my first proper out of body experience that was intentional, that was guided by these three tall, blonde looking beings.
You want to know something that's really interesting? When you mentioned the cloud beings,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've looked into any other stories or anything like that, but I talked to a lady that came onto my show a couple weeks back, a few episodes ago, and she had a client because she was a past life regression practitioner like myself, and she had a client that said that she remembered being in atmosphere, like being at an atmosphere and being conscious of being that, and that
Mm-hmm.
was their client's physical existence or their physical experience was being an atmosphere. So, I don't know if you're ever interested in having like corroborating stories, but you're not the first person I've heard something like that from.
Oh, I would love that because that wasn't my experience. That's the interesting part, right? It's not like I experienced it in a past life or something. I had no idea like that there are plasma beings living inside of the sun. Every sun has these beings inside of them. Like every thing that exists, it's not just to support other things or just, to enhance the beauty. It's like its own thing,
Yeah, and
like their
and
own society existence. It doesn't have to be like us in meat suits.
I've heard that before too. It's just really weird to think about because especially coming from like I need to see it to believe it. It's really hard to even think about that because our traditional society here on Earth says we're the only intelligent life forms out there. But like imagine being an atmosphere. And she was
Mhm.
telling me that the experience of her client was that storm systems, like when it rains and stuff, is how they get nourishment, and how they died was they gained a molecule of some kind, and then they became something else.
Interesting. Like
Yeah,
I wish I was explained all of that when I met them. This is just another reason why I keep telling people that just because you go out of body and you have a first person experience of all of that in real time, it doesn't mean that you get all of the understanding and all the knowledge of everything. You know what I mean? Like that's not the experience at all. It's just like going down the street right now, seeing something weird, having a short conversation, getting a few impressions, and then you're done.
right. And it's just interesting that yeah, you're the second person I've heard that from, that about atmospheric beings basically. So that's weird that you've had an experience of coming into contact with someone like that, and then someone else that I've talked to has had an experience where they've talked to someone who remembers that. And
Mhm.
as far as like remembering past lives, the reason that we had you come on the show was because I saw you talking about your past lives. I would love to hear you talk about some of those past life memories if you'd be willing to.
Sure. I remember most of them, but not all of them from A to Z. That's very rare for me. It's just interesting, right? Because growing up here in Israel, I was always really connected with certain things, and it's funny how people have these feelings like, oh, I really love this country for whatever reason, even though I don't live there, right? Or oh, I feel so connected to the morals and ideas or like culture of some kind of place, right? That feels more natural than where I am and what is happening. And I don't know, I was the same way. Like the majority of my past lives I've spent in America. Those were the lives I remember the most about. And there was one in India, and there was one in I think it was Italy, and one in Spain as well. And just a bunch of them, even parallel ones as well. I didn't even think that was a thing, right? Apparently, there are many, many versions of this Earth, and we don't have to incarnate with just one plan or one idea for a lifetime. We can have it happen like or unfold in multiple versions. We don't have to do occupy all of them, but there's like, more than one thing that you can do at the same time. And that's the part of where we are multidimensional beings, because we don't even have to incarnate in the future all the time. Your future experience can be in the past and vice versa. You can even be your own grandpa or grandma. You can change genders. You can anything can happen. But yeah, I had a few like really happy ones. I had a few really sad ones. The one where I was in Spain, for instance, I was basically, my parents died when I was like, I think 20 years old. And they had this local pub somewhere. I don't remember the name of. I just remember working there every single day since I was a kid. That's the only thing I did. I think I skipped school a lot too. I just helped around. Let's call it a bistro, I guess, pub/restaurant. And that was basically my life. I was just so lonely, but somehow okay with it. I don't know, I just came to work every day and that's it. I just talked to the people in the neighborhood, and even that I didn't really like that much. And all I was waiting for every day was just to go. I had this back room, and at the end of the day, I would go in the back. I had this my lazy chair there, like just a really comfortable couch, and there was a fireplace as well, and I also had a cat. And yeah, one day after my shift, I just felt really woozy and really weird, and I think I was about 40 years old. And I just went to sit in my chair like I always do, say hello to my cat. And as soon as I sat down, I had this experience of seeing myself from the side. I was having an out of body experience basically, and I was seeing myself having a heart attack and then moving away from that experience. And that was one memory, for instance. The reason I don't have a lot of details on some of these things is because when you're having this experience, unlike a regression where you're talking to someone and they're like, "Oh, I want you to focus on this or that," when you're reliving it, like not having like I had a regression done by a friend, but the point is in the regression, yeah, everything's really intense. I feel all the feelings or something like that. It can be really overwhelming, but it's like a secondary experience because I'm still in my body, right? And I'm still here talking to you. I'm just in a slightly deeper state of consciousness where I'm having this, let's call it a very vivid vision, maybe that's where I can feel some emotions or impressions from. But when you're in the lucid dream and you're reliving those moments, like I can feel the shoes, I can feel everything.
So what's your concept on this? I want to get your take on this because you've had a lot of experiences. What's your take on the concept of simultaneous time?
Well, we as souls, we don't experience time. It's just a matter of our attention. And time also apparently doesn't exist. It's all just moments and they're all happening simultaneously. And we can, if we just focus, when we don't have a body, if we just focus on the moment, we can just be there.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
So same thing happens with the incarnation. Like, oh, now you want to have an incarnation between the years 2000 and blah and 2000 and blah. Well, okay, you can do from 99 to 2000 and I don't know 9 instead of 2000 2010, right? Just an example. But you can be like overlapping on the same time frame, even on the same planet, even in the same place. Or you can go like, okay, 2000s today, I don't know, the early 1900s tomorrow.
I've heard that concept before too. Is that like they call it simultaneous time, where you could even have lifetimes where you're interacting with yourself. And
Hmm.
that's kind of a mind.
I did not have that experience, but I believe it's possible. In one of my experiences out of body, I went back in time and I saw myself during an eighth grade experience with a neighbor. But the point is, yeah, it's very, very possible. And I want to ask you if you would like me to go back to the aliens, because like especially because you showed like a lot of interest in the physical
Oh
abductions
yeah,
that I had.
yeah. I was telling you before we started recording that I when I first started when I first started this show, I would have never even thought
Hmm.
about aliens even being anywhere related to astral travel or past life memories or anything like that or any spiritual aspect. But what's really strange, and the more I've got into this and the more people I've talked to, the more research I've done, is they are a huge part of it. And even people who have been abducted and have had really horrible, horrible experiences and they keep getting abducted over their whole lives, a lot of the times in
Hmm.
their earlier life, it's very fearful for them and it's scary. But then later in life, as they keep getting abducted, it's almost like a spiritual experience for them later in life after the fear is gone. And
Hmm.
sometimes people will get abducted with their actual bodies. Sometimes people will be abducted just their astral
Just
bodies.
so yeah.
And it's so weird because I was into like I'm not like into aliens, but I follow it, right? Because the Pentagon here in the States, they released all that UFO footage and they've come out saying like yes, this is real. Even NASA has been like yeah, we're investigating this ongoing. This is a real phenomena. So yeah, if you want to talk about your alien abductions, that'd be fantastic because it's so interesting that it's even related to this. I wouldn't have thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really popular now. I've seen so much like on the news in the last couple of years where before they would just make fun of it, of anything at all. Weather balloons. Anyway, um, yeah, I don't know. For me, I didn't expect the aliens at all. It was really weird. Like I said, in my first experience was still pretty tame, but in the second, they took me to some reptilian planet. And I'm just going to summarize a little bit just to get through it a little bit faster. But basically, took me to some, they called it the ancestral planet for all reptilian beings because there are like thousands of them, apparently, different subspecies of this reptilian, whatever. And this is some kind of ancestral like starting point for that DNA or something. For them, it's all about DNA. That's how they know the story of the universe and where it originated and other planets where it propagated. And they took me there, and it looked like Tatooine basically from Star Wars. It was just this like giant desert where you could barely see anything a few meters away from you because of all the sand in the air. And there were these like whitish sand, like circular structures that had these doorways and these little windows. And they took me inside of one of them, and there were like hundreds of different types of reptilians there. And this escalated. Can you imagine? This was like the third out of body experience since I started doing it intentionally in the span of like 2 weeks. It's like no aliens, aliens of every kind. And I even did like illustrations of them, but it was just so cool. There were some that had horns, that had multiple eyes. I've started noticing by now that a lot of the reptilian beings, especially that we have here and that we interact with, not all of them, but about like 60% of them have this very common shape to their body. Like they have tails. They look like us, like the body shape, but they have talons instead of nails. They obviously have no hair, no body hair, and they're a little bit scaly. Some of them have really thick and big scales. Some of them have really fine ones. They feel like really smooth, like really soft. Their skin, like a snake almost. And they can be any color that you can imagine. Like the one I saw up there that came to greet me in that hut was on Tatooine, let's call it. Um, had this like dark blue, almost black like color predominantly, and then this like pink streak in the middle that started from his neck and went down to his stomach. And he had they have these giant eyes, like not all of them again, but the majority of them, these really big eyes, and it's very common that they are yellow and cat-like with the slit in the middle. Two tiny nostrils, for whatever's supposed to be a nose and this lipless mouth and these two holes on the sides that are supposed to be the ears, I guess. And the majority of them are also hanging out naked. Apparently, they're big on nudism. And I understand why, because unlike humanoids, like humans, I've seen a lot of humans of the universe as well. And unlike us, they don't have external genitalia. Apparently, their genitalia is internal and it just comes out, whatever, you get the idea. But that makes sense, right? Like, why do you need clothes if you have like nothing distracting to cover up?
Yeah, it does make sense. And so is this? I've heard about the reptilians before, and I've heard about everybody I've heard talk about them. It's very negative. They talk about these beings like they're literally here to harvest humanity. So what's your take on that?
I wanted to tell you earlier because I found out a lot of things about the whole thing with the religion. Like, I believe in God, just so you know. I just don't follow any religion or religious depiction of what that is. And I know that it's inside of us and we're all connected to it. And it's love. It's not about judgment. It's not about anger. It's not about, how they say jealous, angry God. That's what we imagine here because of, our negative emotions. But we're basically projecting ourselves on what that should be. But it's not about that at all. And all of the judging and all of the negativity we do to ourselves because God is like your mom or dad. It just loves you. And when you're having a hard time, it loves you even more because it wants you to be okay. But it can't fix your problems for you because you're not a victim. It didn't choose your life for you and you chose everything yourself. And with the reptilians, they are souls just like me or you. I personally, for the majority of my life before I was human, I was only here for the last 100 years, by the way, period-wise, that I chose to incarnate in. So not a very long time. But I can tell you, before I incarnated here on Earth, I've been observing this planet for over like 2,000 years, I think. And from the moon, by the way. And what I wanted to tell you is that basically about 10,000 years ago, and this is really interesting because it's very similar to what the Bible says, right? And you'll get the connection in a second. About 10,000 years ago, these ETs came with our moon, inside of the moon, from somewhere else. And they had this, and it wasn't just one species, it was many species. And they wanted to create something, to do some kind of experiment. And this is where religion comes in. They created a variety of humans, right? They took DNA from all sorts of species across the universe to create the Asians, the blacks, like everything, the European-looking people, because you can see that reflected if you go out of body like I do and you meet all of these people outside of our Earth, you can see that they are all different, just like us. Just on their planets, because they're not an experiment, they evolved there naturally. You don't have white, black, Asian, and all of that. You have one. Pick one. It's usually one type. So they can be either tall blondes or African looking people or whatever. And the reason we have so many is, and this is where all the religions comes in, is because it was an experiment. And they were supposed to observe us from the moon and our progress. And for us to play by their rules and to develop the way they want for the sake of their experiment, right? They became the gods. So you had that Jehovah fella, right? You had the Muslim one, you had all of them. And they would literally just, this is why they would always tell the people to not have sex with the other people, right? Not to mix their genetics. And they thought it was because of some cool rule that God has, but it was actually so they don't mix their values and cultures, and so that they don't contaminate each other with the DNA as well and ruin the experiment. Because each of these beings that created whatever cultures here on Earth of human or versions of human that was supervising them had their own ideas of what kind of experiment and what kind of direction they want this version of humanity to have. And this is where all of that started. And about 2,000 years ago, they kind of, the experiment, I guess, didn't go direction they wanted, and they shifted instead of, that is where around the time where the gods disappeared, because they decided they wanted to recover the DNA. So what they did in the last 2,000 years is they were looking for specific strains that were not contaminated too much by other interracial sex situations. So they could restart the experiment like later, I think also on Earth. That's the bizarre part. And that's why it all turned into these horrible abductions instead, where they literally just extracting DNA from everyone and cultivating like specific human evolutions. For instance, there'd be like there's this ginger woman on YouTube. I don't remember the name of her channel, and she's like a hybrid whatever program lady that they keep taking her DNA and making these hybrid people with her, and that's their plan B. They want to make a new version of humanity where they're less human and more, for instance, gray or reptilian or whatever. And this also relates to what you asked me about if they are evil, because it's not about good or bad. There's just something bigger going on here. And some of the reptilian people may have really different values than who we are, and we may consider them rude and horrible. But where they live, it just makes sense, and it's just what they do. And if people looked back into their past lives, they would understand that they might have been some of these people, and what they did back then seemed right to them. Like, how can you judge that, right? This is a completely different planet experience and morality system or whatever. And they have their own reasons for what they're doing that they think is good. So, to my personal experience with these reptilians in particular, I had some that were really charming, they were really friendly, they were really nice, they were really respectful. And I had a lot that were really mischievous and actually kind of disgusting in their behavior. For instance, I'll give you a couple of examples. One time, I just go take a nap. I didn't plan on going out of body or anything, but I did a bit of meditation. I got into the zone, and hop, I got pulled out by this crocodile-looking man. He had the color of bright green lime. He had tiny beady eyes, a bit of a snout. That's why he reminded me a bit of a crocodile. And this short little tail, and he was almost like the dwarves from Middle Earth. He was very square in his shape, really boxy and really like muscular. And he was just like I didn't even know what's happening. I just opened my eyes out of body, and he starts going, "Hello, blah blah blah." I am like my translation of what he does to me felt almost like a kindergarten teacher or something, because he was in charge of these young ones. And he showed me this holographic screen next to his head and this rudimentary, like very basic 3D visualization of his ship going through our solar system. And he was taking them almost like on an excursion or like a field trip for school or something to show them our solar system. And he told me that he just wanted to show them Earth, and he was looking because he had like really young ones with him, like really tiny ones. He wanted, I don't know, them to be safe or something. So he was looking for a human who was used to this kind of thing and didn't have any aggression towards them, just randomly, and wasn't going to be spooked by this. And I just happened to be it at the time. And then I started hearing behind me like a multitude of little voices. And I say little because they all felt like children to me. It was just this subjective feeling behind the voices. And there was approximately 10 of them. That's how it felt like to me. And suddenly I focus back at him, and I see that instead of all of the artwork that I have, because I also paint on my walls, there are these little pages, like almost torn out of a notebook or something. And on these papers, there's like almost like a very bad crayon drawing of the Teenage Mutant Turtles. And I was like, what? Like, what is that? And then, of course, like he's really polite, like I said, and he explains to me, well, the children really like your TV show here on Earth, the Teenage Mutant Turtles, because we have access to your television, to your internet, to everything. And they really like that show. And I understand why, because if you think about it, they are green little crocodile people. It's not really far off from green turtle man, right? So yeah, and then one of those little dudes shows up and he's just like a miniature version of this turtle crocodile man who was to me he looked approximately like maybe the size of a 10-year-old here on Earth, like the adult version. And the little one was almost like a fetus. He was like he was like at best I don't know inches very well, but he was like at best like I think like 20 centimeters tall, like tiny, like a little lizard person standing on two. And he came over to me, gave me a high five, and after that they were satisfied. He was really pleased with the interaction. I was really happy. It was really interesting. That's it. I'm back in my body. The experience is over. So that was like more of the positive ones. On the negative side, I broke up with my boyfriend. I just happened to be gay after like 15 years, like a couple of years ago. And during that time, that was before the breakup, but I already was feeling like it might be over. And one time I was just trying to get out of body. And as soon as I get out of body, I see this green, like dark, I think he was like a dark green, almost a little bit of brown to him, like reptile laying next to me. And I think he just didn't know that I was already awake and aware. But then when he noticed, he panicked and instantly shifted into the form of my ex. And he was like, "Hey, like, how you doing?" I'm like, what is this? Like, well, like, I know you're a reptile person." And he's like, "No, I'm your boyfriend." I'm like, "No, you're not." Out of body, you can look like whatever you want. It's not a special skill that he has. Like, I can turn into whatever I want. Like, I joke a lot with people, like, don't trust anything you see. Always ask inside yourself what is happening, because the feelings won't lie, because everything is based on telepathy there. But you can be distracted by visuals. You can get distracted by visuals, is what I mean. Because, here on Earth, we're taught to always look outside ourselves to see what's real and what's not. So it's very dangerous out of body. And I'm not saying very dangerous because you can be killed, because again, you're an eternal soul. You cannot be damaged, harmed, or killed. But you can be, like, they can leech on your life force. And when you come back to the body, you will feel very sick. They can, a lot of times they try to do that through sex. And that is why sometimes they turn into my ex, or they would try to do something like that with me. I had a lot of struggles out of body, like a lot of people in the out of body community that are more like, say, I've been projecting for 50 years, but they didn't explore their past lives. They didn't meet very often with alien beings or even leave the earth. Because you don't know what this person does every day, right? Or what their intentions are with this experience. And also, we all have different past life connections to these aliens. So what you meet might not be necessarily the same people that I meet when I go out there. And your type of relationship with them might not be the same type that I have. And saying that, I was predominantly a human of the universe. And they just, history wise, they just don't have the best relationship with the reptilian variety of people out there. So I think because of that, a lot of my experiences were on the more negative side. Like, even one time it was so extreme. I was talking to my friend who I was suspecting um, was being, impregnated by these ETs, because she was having a very irregular period, and she had a lot of bleeding. Sometimes she wouldn't have a period at all for several months, and she would feel like she felt when she was pregnant, nauseated, a lot of things and problems, and then poof, it was gone one day. It never got to the stage where she actually grew a belly, right? But I was like, you should get, like, she was feeling like that again. And I was like, hey, why don't you get checked out by a doctor? And remember, if you don't want to be part of an experiment that you don't remember signing up for, why don't you just get an abortion? And that's like a normal thing a person would say, right? Because I don't know if it's an alien baby, but if you feel you're pregnant and you don't want to keep the baby, like, at least don't wait too long, right? If it's the first couple of weeks and you don't want to do this, maybe that's the time to put on the brakes.
It's just like,
And
it's so bizarre just thinking about that, because I have also heard about the of like the hybrid babies and stuff.
Hmm.
And I thought it was all just kind of like at first when I heard it like a crock of shit, but apparently there's been like medical evidence saying like this one woman, she was only like 20 something and she had the uterus of like an 80-year-old person because they were like the doctors apparently told her like your uterus looks like you've had like 30 or 40 babies in there. And she couldn't have her own children ever because her uterus was just completely just like basically shriveled and just too damaged. But she's like, I've never been pregnant. And they're like, no, you've definitely been pregnant like a million times. So yeah, that's wild. I would like to hear a little bit about the other humans that you've experienced, because like you just totally, we've covered a lot of different stuff in this episode, and I'm stoked to hear it. But I'd like to hear more about that. But one question that I would like to ask you is, and I always try to ask this in my episodes, what do you think happens to us after we die?
Well, I don't know what exactly happens to everyone when they die. I've even met some spirits in my out-of-body experiences who died in front of me. I don't know. I don't think we all have the same experience. And even if we go into some kind of place, we are not obligated to stay there permanently. Like, it's not going to prevent us from experiencing the rest of creation, like very similarly to how I guess we do when we astral project. That's at least my opinion on that.
Shimi, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate you taking your time to come on and talk about all this stuff. It was super interesting.
No worries. Sorry I was a bit all over the place, but the thing is, when you have a lot of experiences in a very short time, you don't really know what takes priority.
That's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Shimi for coming on to the show, and I'd also like to thank you for tuning in. Head on over to Facebook, be really careful saying this, to the Regression Session Podcast to check out the drawings that Shimi sent me. They're really interesting. If you like the show, I'd appreciate you subscribing in your podcast player and sharing the show around with anyone you think might be interested, or even someone who you think would be interested in coming onto the show. If you're interested in coming onto the podcast and talking with me about your experiences, send me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.